Hey everyone, I'm Ajay Fry, and welcome to Mistakes Were Made. This is the 5th episode of my podcast, and this one is a little bit different than the last ones. For starters, this one was not recorded at a live event. There is no audience. It was recorded a couple of days ago over Discord with my guest, Johnathon Rose-Lyon. He's a comic creator, YouTube content creator, all-around hilarious, awesome dude. And we had a good chat, and he shared a hilarious story, which we'll get to in just a bit. But this is a different opening than I'm used to. I don't have a script in my hand. I'm just talking into my microphone. This being a podcast all about mistakes, I'm not going to do a second take of this. Oh, God. And I'm just going to tell you, like, I've been kind of, what's the right word? Entrapped, ensnared in my own paranoia about putting out excellent content and trying to make everything the best that it can be. Can't say that I'm really a perfectionist because I end up putting out stuff that I know isn't as good as it could be. I get over myself eventually, but sometimes I definitely overthink things, and I think the whole idea of doing the podcast came from a night of conversation with my wife where we were out and she was giving me the gears over the fact that I have all these ideas, but I never actually take action on them. And I just agreed there and then to sort of, okay, well, let's book a venue. Let's make the first step, because if we have the first step taken, we'll have to get it done. And so I have put out 4 episodes of the podcast so far. I'm proud of what I've done. And now it's a new adventure. What will this podcast, or this format, I should say, be like? I'm not going to come back after the interview with anything additional to add. I'm just going to let the interview play and the podcast conclude with a little bit more music at the end. Because basically it's Sunday night as I'm recording this. I intend to put these out every Monday morning, and I've boxed myself into a corner where I wonder, should I be endeavoring to write another silly, clever parody commercial as a sponsor? I don't have another podcast recorded for my next episode, so I have nothing to pull from to tease you with as far as the next episode and all the other work that goes into producing a podcast, the visuals for social media to remind people that the podcast exists. All these things are still weighing on me, and it's already late in the evening. So I think I'm just not going to make any more mistakes waiting. Maybe it's a mistake to do it this way, but let's give it a try. Here's the 5th episode of Mistakes Were Made with Ajay Fry and Johnathon Rose-Lyon. Now, that wasn't your name a few years back, was it?
No, it wasn't.
So,
no, I got a marriage.
Yeah, and you decided to throw Rose in there ahead of Lyon.
Yeah, that's something that literally since I was like, I don't know, probably like a preteen or something, it was one of those like weird thoughts I had very early on in life where I was just like, oh, that's sort of dumb and weird that like the lady gives up her last name and takes the guy's name and the guy doesn't have to do anything. And it was just one of those sort of like child thoughts where it's just like, oh, here's a weird thing about the world I don't understand, and it always just stuck with me. And so yeah, I used to be Johnathon Lyon, and then I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna take whoever I marry's last name. Like we both take each other's last names, and luckily I ended up with Rose-Lyon, which is like just a cool medieval knight name, and I love it.
Yeah, I was gonna say you really lucked out in that. I mean, being a performer and marrying a Gaudio, AJ Gaudio Fry or Fry Gaudio does not have the same ring for a performer as just simply AJ Fry does. So while I appreciate your intent there, I'm not gonna join that same boat. I'm pretty happy being AJ Fry. So Johnathon Rose-Lyon, you are my first non-Canadian guest on Mistakes Were Made, and we're also doing this new format. But you have married a Canadian. Do you feel at all like you are, half Canadian now, or in some capacity partially Canadian?
You know what? When I need that escape hatch from America, then I'm Canadian all the way. Once shit goes down here, I'm just like, I'm like just gonna douse myself in maple syrup,
Mm.
and I'm just gonna roll on up to the border and be like, "Yo, let me in, please. I married one of you."
Well, I can vouch for your politeness and kindness. I feel like you would make a very excellent honorary Canadian.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate, like, that was going up to Toronto because I spent a lot of time in Toronto, and it was just like I felt understood by a city where it was just like, oh, people are actually polite, and it's actually like fairly clean here, and it doesn't like drive me insane. uh but yeah, it's a I would love to I'm probably like gonna end up in Canada at this point, like just watching like everything burn around us down here. I'm just like, yeah, Canada, I can handle some cold opposed to the hellfire.
We'll see what happens with this upcoming federal election. We're recording this on September 20th, and looks like we could be headed down a very slippery slope up here in Canada, at least politically.
I'm sure.
Speaking of
mistakes have been made by one Trudeau too very recently. Well,
so
I'm
they
sure
weren't
that can't
such
help.
recent mistakes, but they were pretty severe mistakes. But
very, very conveniently timed coming out of mistakes. But
I don't want to go too far down that political rabbit hole.
Please do not.
I would rather ask you a bit more about yourself so our audience can get to know what you've been up to. So you got a YouTube channel, you got 40,000 subscribers. It's called Make Stuff, not to be confused with the I Like Making Stuff channel. Have you spotted those guys?
That was the one thing I didn't think about when making a name for the channel. Was just like looking up the name of the channel, and there are so many. I think I'm getting closer to the top at this point if you look up Make Stuff. But it's still like there's someone with like 2 million subscribers or something called like I Like to Make Stuff. But yeah, turns out people make stuff on YouTube. Who'd have thunk?
I had the same issue with this podcast and this idea. For the longest time, I thought, I'll have a little series, be it a YouTube show or a podcast, whatever it ends up being, and it will be called My Mistake, where I tell stories of all the mistakes that I've made in my life, and maybe I'll talk to other people about their mistakes. And I even looked up My Mistake. The Twitter handle was available. A bunch of different things were available. So this would have been years ago when I originally thought of this. And then just the week ahead of launching the event, I thought, I should probably look into My Mistake, whether that's taken. And sure enough, it was. And then I was, went with, okay, well, I'll do Mistakes Were Made. And then there was like one or two other podcasts out there. But then I looked on a few other platforms, and there are so many other podcasts called Mistakes Were Made. Nothing is original anymore.
That is the essence of this podcast, though. I realized very quickly, especially trying to find a domain name for Make Stuff, realized very quickly why every app is spelled like without the vowels or just in nonsense language, because just every domain is taken, everything's gone. So, I'm just gonna keep pushing through, and then I will get my 2,000,001 subscribers and finally dethrone I Like to Make Stuff.
So what is Make Stuff then? What is the stuff that you make with your awesome YouTube channel?
Oh, we do all kinds of stuff. It's a lot of video essays, so a lot of sort of educational videos or analysis videos. Or just secretly, it's sort of just a bunch of love letters to things that I'm passionate about, and excuses to talk about things I'm passionate about. So, for instance, my third video was called Avatar: The Last Airbender: The Importance of Mistakes. So we are big fans of mistakes on Make Stuff. And it's a lot of art analysis and doing a bit of our own art. We use it as a label to put out a couple comics we've done, some podcasts we've done, just stuff all over. It's really just a broad label for whatever random thing I want to do this week.
Now, though this is your first time on the podcast, that was a stupid setup to this question. I was just trying to circle back to the fact that I have interviewed you in the past for one of the comic books that you put out. When would that have been? Gosh. Would that have been like 2015 or 16 potentially?
I think it might have been like early. It was TCAF. I want to say that was like 3 or 4 TCAFs ago. So I think it was 2016.
So I
Oh
guess what I'm
man.
trying to get at is, I mean, you've been a creator for a while now. Is that all
Mhm.
that you do, or are you still in the point where you've got like a full-time gig or a part-time gig to supplement the income, or are you sustaining yourself with make stuff these days?
Actually, yeah. The just very recently, the Patreon has picked up a bunch because we ditched YouTube monetization. We stopped putting ads on our YouTube videos because of
Mm-hmm.
just all the awful stuff that YouTube's been doing,
Mm-hmm.
and a crazy and humbling byproduct of that was a ton of people jumping onto the Patreon. So that ended up pushing me over the edge so that I can do this pretty much full time. And also, I just do I try to be very creative with the ways I can make any money. Like right now, we're doing some videos with Kelly Sue DeConnick and Emma Rios. Kelly Sue DeConnick, who created the version of Captain Marvel that is in the MCU and
Ooh.
is an amazing comics writer. But she did a book with Emma Rios called Pretty Deadly, and I just did a trailer for the new comic arc of that. And just we're putting together some recap videos that are really fun. And so I've tried to find sort of just people I would love to collaborate with for free, but
Mm.
convince them to pay me to do it. And it's worked out pretty well so far.
Well,
I'm
that's
enjoying it.
good.
Yeah,
So now this interview came together pretty slapdash. We were just sending a couple of messages on Twitter,
right.
direct messages. For the live event that I did for my first 4 episodes, I sent out a bit of a breakdown of how the show format works, etc. And I fully let my guests understand that this was in part inspired by the Today I Fucked Up subreddit. Are you familiar with the
Right.
subreddit? Have you read a lot of TIFUs?
Yeah, to the point that like Reddit's one of those apps where I have to just delete it off my phone every few months to be at all productive. But that is a top subreddit for me for sure.
Hmm. So, have you prepared any stories of mistakes that were made for us, Jonathan? Do you have
Oh,
a
I
tale? I mean, I can go first if that would make you more comfortable. I know that you have one of something pretty extreme happening at your home.
yeah, I have an extensive tale of a series of mistakes from everyone involved. But that is totally up to you. Mine's a bit lengthy
Well,
probably,
that's
but
fine. I can tee us up and take us into this path by sharing a silly story from my youth. Um,
yes, please do.
just growing up in a kind of sketchy neighborhood. Not sketchy, but just um, there were lots of young
Canada
kids who would,
sketchy.
yeah, Canada sketchy. You know, bikes would get stolen. You get
Right.
the flaming bag of dog crap left on your front porch. That those sort of
Right.
pranks and things.
Adam Sandler comedy sketchy.
Yeah. But my my house was the neighborhood hangout for all the kids. I would have been about maybe 10 when this happened, and we're all hanging out on the porch, and my dad's away. But he left the door unlocked, but we were for some reason found ourselves like playing around with the door lock and trying to, I guess, get inside or bust the door open, and we
Hmm.
discovered that by just jiggling with the door handle enough, we could actually get into the house when the door was locked. So
Hmm.
my dad came home, and I said, "Dad, give me your keys." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And I grabbed his keys from him, and I threw them inside, locked the door from the inside, and then closed it. And he's like, now how are we supposed to get inside? And there are a bunch of kids from the neighborhood standing around watching all this happen. And I'm, fidgeting with the door, trying to get it to unlock. And he's going, you better be able to get us in. But also, he doesn't want us to be able to get in because, as I found out when I
Right.
managed to get the door open and show him, look, we can break into our house. He's like, you idiot. You just showed the whole neighborhood that you can break into our house. I have to go get the door, the lock replaced. I was so proud of what I look, Dad. Uh,
Oh my gosh! Every time we have people come over to our apartment sometimes, maybe to dog sit or whatever, and
yeah.
we'll leave a key under the mat. And every single time, Haley will open the door, and we are in an apartment building,
Mm.
and she'll take the key and every time when she opens the door, she's like, "All right, I'm gonna put the key out here and put it under the mat. Okay, the key's under the mat now." And it's just like, what are you? Defeat
Don't
all the
declare
purpose.
that. Yeah.
So yeah, this is or she'll just like go out there and just like just like say hi to people passing in the hallway as she puts the key under the mat. It's nonsense. But actually, that's a good transition to my story there, because my apartment, this all takes place in a sort of like the ultimate college nightmare shithole apartment, and we got robbed twice.
Ooh.
Which is unrelated to the story I'm telling, but but neither time was it technically breaking and entering, because the first time they just jiggled the door and then it just pops open, and so they just walked into our apartment through the front door, and so
That's
they're
still
like, yeah, nothing we can do
stealing.
about that. Well, yeah, no, I have no idea. Like the cops were just the laziest people ever, but they were just like, oh yeah, it's not technically breaking and entering, but they stole some like consoles or whatever, and then we got this big deadlock for our front door,
Yeah.
so that it wouldn't just jiggle open anymore. And then like 2 weeks later, I come home from Christmas break, and there are just footsteps in the snow up to my window. This apartment was one of those like half underground apartments, so it had just like the tiny little windows towards the tops of the walls that were at like ground level.
Right.
And I just see these two sets of footprints leading up to my window, my bedroom window, and then away from them. And it turns out that the windows on the apartment were so shitty that they did not meet in the middle where the latch goes to lock them.
Oh my.
So the second time they just opened the window and, and walked into our apartment, and it was just the most robbable apartment in history.
Was
Oh
anything
my
significantly of value stolen?
Oh yeah, there was it was like a total worst case scenario, because it was all just like, video game stuff, but I had this gorgeous Gibson Les Paul guitar that I
Oh.
was absolutely in love with, and it was like a $3,000 guitar, and the way I found out I had renter's insurance through my parents, because I was technically still a dependent, or however the hell any of that
Right.
works. And but there was like the deductible from each time we got robbed, and since they robbed us twice, like there was a deductible from each robbery.
Wow.
And so like I think I might have gotten like a few $100s in renter's insurance back from all that, but no, it wasn't nice, and I don't recommend it. Don't get robbed. It's not
Yeah.
fun.
I just had my
That
bike
was my
stolen
mistake.
a while back. No good.
Oh gosh, that's it is. It's like, that's why I've been so paranoid about, I think our car has gotten broken into. I love St. Louis. St. Louis is one of my favorite cities ever, but you park in dark alleys behind buildings, and you're not gonna have a good time. And yeah, that's why I do not keep just anything expensive anywhere beyond my office. Was your mic stolen like in your apartment?
My bike?
Oh, your bike. I thought, oh, that's right. I saw that. I thought you said Mike.
No.
Yeah, no. You had, I saw you had like the footage and everything.
It was my mistake for not locking it up as I do, every time that I get home. It was just, I decided to inflate the air in the tires. And I can remember even thinking to myself as I put my tire pump away in the corner, I was like, I hope no one walks up onto our porch and steals my tire inflator bike pump. Then someone stole my bike instead, so silly
How
me.
considerate of them.
Yeah.
Well, that was the mistake all along, was trusting humanity.
Yeah.
We
So
must learn.
you got a pretty severe case of a break-in, but it was law enforcement. What's this story, John?
Oh my gosh. So Yeah. So this is one of those things where it's just like horrific and awful at the time, but just makes for like the best story. So I don't even care anymore.
Yeah, all the best
Uh,
stories start that way.
and so this is at the same apartment. Let's come up with a fake name for my roommate because I don't want to use his actual name. What's a good fake name?
Fred.
Fred. Perfect. So Fred is this roommate that I've had for a couple years now, and it's like the ultimate like just we have no money, we give no fucks about interior design or anything, just like a awful nightmare apartment with like a folding chair, like dinner table and stuff like that.
So this was just a couple of weeks ago then. How old were you?
When was this? I was 20 years old, I think, at the time.
Okay.
And this is when, so yeah, I'd moved there like right when I turned 18. So this is like a couple years in. And so I had this whole summer I had been with my girlfriend at the time. It was like one of those things where it was just like I'm practically living with her, but we hadn't actually like moved in together yet. But I hadn't been back to my apartment all summer. It had been like 2 months since I had been back to my apartment.
Wow.
And her and I were looking for apartments together, and we had found this really fancy place that was like you have to go there and do like 3 interviews and get all these references for it, and it's just like a whole process to get into this place, which was totally opposed to like I was living in this, literally I was paying like $200 for my half of the rent on this shithole apartment. So we were looking at this place, and I finally go back to my apartment after months. I get back, and the first thing I notice is the smell, which is just awful, just terrible. Like everything died in there, and then I realized there's mold on the side of our or under our sink. There was mold, and it's just like that awful mold smell. And then the second thing I realized is there's this like 3 different massive locks, brand new locks on my roommate's bedroom door. And I was like, I guess he's getting really paranoid about us getting robbed. Like I didn't think too much about it because we had been robbed multiple times.
Right.
So I'm like, this is fine. This is cool. Whatever. So I go to I just crash in my bed. I'm exhausted. End of the night. And I get a phone call from my mom. And she says, hey, I just talked to your landlord. And he said, if you move out in this is like right after, this is a week or 2 into August. And my lease there was up at the end of August. And she's like, if you move out in the next like 3 days, he said he will give you your security deposit back and this month's rent back if you move out in the next 3 days. And I was like, Mom, I don't have boxes. I don't have a moving truck. I don't have anywhere to put anything. I don't have another place to live. Like this is like, that's nice, but this is a $200 for my half of the rent. I'm not going to bend over so far backwards. Like this is no, I don't want to do this. And she's like, John, no, trust me, you need to do this. This is a really good deal. And I'm like, Mom, I'm just not going to do this. And she's like, all right, John, listen. And her voice gets really, really like deep and almost whispery. And she's like, John, I got a call from, I don't know who it's from, but I got a call from a man. And he said that they've been watching your apartment and that is up to something. I don't know if it's drugs. I don't know what illegal thing he's doing.
You mean Fred?
And Fred, remember when we said you weren't going to edit this podcast?
I can fix this. Don't worry. I can fix it.
So Fred, good old classic Fred.
Yeah.
He's like, he needs to, he's done something wrong. He's pissed off these people. I don't know if they're cops. I don't know if it's a drug like cartel. But they said they've been watching your apartment and they saw that you got back and they have been watching it for months and they know that you haven't been there. So they don't think you're involved with whatever Fred's doing.
Right.
So they called me and said they're giving you 3 days to get out of the apartment and don't get in the way. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is the most insane thing I've ever heard. And suddenly I'm put in this position where I'm like, oh, apparently, like, oh, and she's like, oh, and you cannot tell Fred. You can't. They told me if you tell Fred, then you are just as involved in this as he is.
Whoa.
And I'm like, okay, well, then do you know if it's a drug cartel or something? Because that's leaving me with the choice to let Fred die without telling him. and so this is just like suddenly, like, it was just supposed to be like a chill weekend back at the apartment, go play video games with Fred.
Right.
And suddenly I'm in the middle of this like
Breaking Bad style scenario.
Yeah. And so and she's like, so you have 3 days to pack up everything you have. And I don't even know if they're listening to this phone conversation right now. I don't know if they have you tapped or what, but I just know they're watching the apartment and they're telling you to get out of there. And I'm not supposed to be telling you any of this. I was supposed to tell you that they are going to give you the lease back. Yeah. And so I hang up the phone. I immediately am just like freaking out. And I call my girlfriend and I'm just like, at this point, I'm just convinced my phone's tapped. And so I'm like, hey, this is I think maybe 1 a.m.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, I'm gonna come over really quick. And she's like, oh, it's 1 a.m. I'm an hour away. And I'm like, yeah, no. I have some really good news. I have a great surprise for you. I'm going to come over really quick. I do the hour-long drive over there. The whole time I think I'm getting like tailed. Like I'm watching all the headlights behind me.
Right.
And just like it's slowing down whenever I think to see if someone will pass me and all this stuff. So paranoid. And I finally get to her place. And I'm like, hey, what's up? Can I see your phone? I turn off her phone. I turn off my phone. I put them in another room and then I turn on music. It's just literally like anything I've ever seen in any spy thriller or anything. And it just total nonsense. And I'm like, okay, this is the situation. Apparently Fred is up to shit. I'm so pissed off at him, but also I think I might need to save his life. I don't know what's going on. But you and I, like, I cannot do this alone. I'm so sorry. You're going to get major girlfriend points for this, but you and I need to go pack up my entire apartment. And she's like, oh yeah, well I have a shift at work in the morning and then I'll come right over, and I'll help you with everything. And I'm like, all right. And I immediately drive back. She's like, you should come, just pass out, get some sleep. I'm like, fuck off. There's no way I'm sleeping right now. This is a crazy ass nightmare situation. So I make the whole drive back again, convinced I'm being tailed. And I stop at Walmart. This is at like 3 a.m. now. They're out of boxes, so I have to buy like $100 in giant Rubbermaid containers to move all of my stuff. And this is peak just being broke in college era. And so it's just like all of the money I have in the world is going into these dumbass Rubbermaid containers that are just super heavy and super inconvenient for moving anything. And I'm 20 and don't know what I'm doing, so I only buy like massive ones. So any of the heavy stuff I have has to be put into like along with everything else, and they're just impossible to carry. I get them all. I go back to the apartment. I am up all night just packing and packing and packing and freaking out. Meanwhile, like at one point, Fred was in his room and he comes out and he's like, hey, what's up? I'm like, not much, just doing some packing at 4 a.m. Totally normal. Nothing is awry here. And he's like, all right, man, I'm going back to sleep, and just goes back to sleep. And I keep packing. And finally at like 9 in the morning, the landlord comes by
Mhm.
and he's like, "Hey, I'm here to, inspect the place because, you're getting your money back, that deal we made." So at this point, like I know like, okay, apparently the landlord is in the know.
Right.
Uh and I'm like, yeah, sure. Come check out the place. It's all whatever. I just found some mold under the sink. Apologies for that. I'll spray it down. And he's like, okay, well, can I go into your roommate's room? Uh, and I was like, oh, as you can see, there's a bunch of locks on there. And he's like, is your roommate in right now? I'm like, No, because I don't know how involved in this he is, and I don't want him to send like a drive-by shooting or whatever is gonna
Right.
happen in this situation. And so
But Fred
so
was
yeah,
in there still.
the friend was in there. He's just totally passed out.
Yeah.
And so like I'm just like, yeah, and I have no way to get in there. He put a million locks on the door. I haven't even been here all summer. And the landlord's like, all right, well, it looks good. Well, I'm gonna send a guy over around noon to get rid of that mold under the sink, and then you should be good to go. And
I'm
thanks
sending
for
over a
getting this cleaned
cleaner.
up. Sending over a cleaner, which should have been a sign for me. And but mistakes were made. And this is at this point I've been up for like, I don't know, like 40 hours or something crazy.
Right.
And so he leaves. I finish the last bit or I finish a bit more packing, and after like an hour or so, I'm just like, I am so thoroughly exhausted. I'm gonna take like a 1 hour nap. So I pass out on the couch in the living room, and it feels like 10 seconds later, I'm woken up by just a couple of knocks on the door. I'm like, oh, the guy's here to get under the sink, whatever. And so I go up. I don't even check the people or anything. Go up, open the door, and it is 6 heavily armed U.S. Marshals, in like raid like body armor.
Oh my goodness.
And the guy in front is holding, I'm pretty sure it was just the shotgun from Jurassic Park. Like,
Yeah.
it was the scariest looking gun I've ever seen. And he's like, hey man, can we come in? And and as an American, we have certain rights, and I know, like, you can't come in without a warrant, and there's he wouldn't be asking if he had one.
Yeah.
And so I'm well aware of my rights here, and so of course I say, please come in. You don't need a fucking warrant. I'm not gonna do anything to stop you fuckers. And so they all start pouring in, and it's all like strategic, and they're like, all right, check around the back and all this stuff, and like, all right, kitchen's clear, the bathroom's clear. And they have one of the marshals sits me down on the couch and is just like, all right, you're gonna sit here. Like, the guy with the shotgun like commands him to just stand there and watch me, make sure I
Right.
don't do anything. And he's like, you know what your roommate's been up to? I'm like, something fucking dumb, apparently, and I'm fucking furious at him. And so they start pounding on his door. They start like slamming on the door, but there's all those locks on there, and they cannot get through it. So they're screaming, "Open the door!" And then my phone starts ringing, and the guy who's watching over me says, "Pick it up and tell him to come out." And so I'm like, all right, assuming that it's my roommate.
Right.
But the worst timing in U.S. history, I answer the phone, and it's like, oh hey, it's Ravenwood Apartments, and we're so happy to tell you that you got into this apartment. Your thing has been approved. This thing that I've done all these interviews for, and have like just had to prove that I'm this upright sort of citizen. And in the background, there's a man literally screaming, "Open the door! We will fucking tase you! We will fucking tase you! Open this door right now!" And I'm like, I'm sorry, this TV's so loud. And I'm like, that's great news. I'm gonna call you back. Bye. And I immediately hang up.
Yeah.
And it's just nightmare timing. And they keep pounding on the door. And finally, my roommate is smart enough to just open the door for them. And they bring him out. They put him in cuffs. They sit him on the couch beside me. And I am just like the angriest person alive right now. And he turns to me, and the first thing he says to me is, did they have a warrant? Why did you let them in? And I'm like, you motherfucker. How dare you? And like, because I didn't know what I still at this point don't know what is going on, what he is doing.
Right.
And they start carrying all this stuff out of his apartment, and there's a giant like sun lamp, and there's like bags of fertilizer and all this stuff. And then they bring out this potted plant. It's like maybe a foot tall. And the one guy who's watching over both of us now, he's like, is that it? And they're like, yeah, this is it. And it is the tiniest little like pot plant I have ever seen in my life. And that is it. That is all he was. He was growing
one marijuana.
He was growing one pot cigarette in his apartment.
Oh no! And he's probably in jail for years now, right?
Well, luckily he's white, so he has that going for him. Not to give too much about Fred away, but he immediately, like, they start interrogating me, and he immediately, credit to him, he's like, oh, he had nothing to do with it. I'm like, yeah, apparently I'm just fucking stupid is my issue here, and I don't know what the hell's going on at any given point. And so, like, luckily I'm off the hook. Nothing ended up on my record or anything.
Right.
But he, like, I think because he had so little of anything, that I think they put him away for like a week or something in jail. Yeah. Like, I don't think like even a bud had like shown up or anything. And then like in my, like, after everyone's clearing out, in my fucking stupidity, I'm just like, hey, did we like, so when can I get that deposit back? Because I need to pay. I like all that's running through my mind is like, oh yeah, I just got this new place and I have to pay this deposit. He's like, yeah, so when am I? And my landlord's like, if I ever see any of you again, I will personally beat the shit out of you. Ooh. I'm like, that's fair. I agree with that. You're welcome to it. You know what? Keep the deposit. And like right then is when it occurred to me, like, oh, it was just a dumb story to get me out of the apartment. But what it turned out was that the landlord had come in, and the smell was so strong from apparently my dumbass roommate growing pot in the apartment. The smell was so strong that he was afraid that there's gonna be like a chemical fire or something. He's like, I got to get people in here ASAP. And it turns out that 6 U.S. Marshals were already in the area from like some other raid or something. And so the cops had them come over like super short notice and raid the apartment for their one tiny little bud. But when we were sitting on the couch, my roommate was just like, yeah, man, I watched so many videos. I factored in everything. I was thinking like, I was following all these tips for how to grow weed. I was like, did it fucking occur to you that you don't do it in an apartment building, the bottom floor of an apartment building? Apparently they had just taken the temperature on our windows, and his windows were like 10 degrees higher than every other window in the apartment building. And so, I was homeless for a month because I just had nowhere. I just like hung out with my, at my girlfriend's parents for a month, and had to explain to everyone, oh yeah, it's just, my apartment got raided. And then I still had like 2 days to move out of there, so I still had to do all of that. But yeah, that was how I was raided by the fine people, the U.S. Marshal Agency, whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I think my mistake was trust. I don't know.
If you just kept staying at your girlfriend's apartment, you would have avoided the whole confrontation.
Yep. Oh my gosh. But yeah, it was a nightmare, and now it makes a fun podcast story. So it was worth it.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. So if folks want to check out what you're up to, where can they find you?
Yeah, go check out Make Stuff. We're probably like the third or fourth one down on YouTube. And go check out at Jonathan Oscar, JohnAthonoscar, on Twitter. And there's fun stuff on there too.
All right, fantastic. Mistakes were made. Johnathon Rose-Lyon, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.